So today you're going to be doing a speed dating thing. So I think this is the perfect opportunity to give a little before we start the episode, a little rundown of what this little speed dating you have going on.
My
Because
little
by the time we do the next episode, you'll have a rapport for us. So
How cute do I look, though? Do I look
you do look cute.
super,
Maybe
super?
you maybe could pull down the
Pull
shirt
a-
show a little bit more titty.
Yeah.
Like
I got
lower.
like one of those old people bras on that goes real high.
Oh, she said old people bras, or just take it off.
Nah.
How would that look if you took it off?
I mean, hot, but not. It's classy event. It's a speed dating event at the Page and Rye, and it's for first responders. All the men have to be first responders. They get to go for free, and it was $40 for the ladies.
Damn, so the ladies got to pay and the dudes get it for free. So
Yeah.
they're totally like setting this up for the first responders.
Yeah, and then you get a free drink, and they said they're having snacks. So if all else fails, at least I get some snacks. But I'm actually nervous because I'm so used to only dating online that like the in-person thing, like when Angelica and I, my friend that was here, we went to this Boots and Beats concert, and she was like trying to get me to flirt with guys in person, and I was like shutting down a little bit and getting nervous. And I don't know if it's just because I'm so used to doing the online thing, or if I really am like slightly introverted.
Well, and then also too, like, what if you have an interaction with someone where you're already out the gates, not interested? Can you like say pass?
I don't know. They give no rules. I have no idea if it's
Like you sit at a table and like
the guys rotate, do the girls rotate? Is it just a mixer? You just get to talk to people?
Because I remember I was watching Impractical Jokers, and one of the funny like skits they did or whatever is that one of the guys had to do some speed dating, but he was chained to a fucking piece of one of those big chicken. What are those things that you get at like Disneyland?
I don't know.
Like a big fucking turkey leg,
Oh.
and he had to eat it while he was speed dating the whole time, which I thought was hilarious. But the speed dating for them was like he was doing one, and then they would like kind of break it, and then the next person would sit down. So
I hope it's like
I'm
that.
curious to see how they'll end up doing it. Well, obviously you're gonna have more of a full rapport on our next one. So,
Yeah.
but I just thought I'd throw that out there because
So
now
we will report back
we
on
will
how
definitely
it went.
yeah,
How it went.
we'll report back. So. Anyways, guys, thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Tell No Lies podcast. I am your host, Devin Physique, and as always, here with our new speed dater, Dr. Ashley Contorno.
That is me. Hello.
Yes.
Today, I had a couple of things planned, and then wait. Can we just address something?
What are we addressing?
Devin was using Lysol all-purpose cleaner to clean his dishes with, and I was like, "What are you doing that has bleach in it?" And he's like, "It's an all-purpose cleaner,
Yeah, it says all purpose.
not dishes."
It says all purpose.
Someone come help this boy. Come help this boy. He's
well,
he's
at least you
bacheloring a
know.
little
At
too
least
hard.
you know I'm a little clean. Then they got the bleach.
I guess. Does it make your asshole white?
I mean, I don't look back there, and certainly nobody's back there licking the butthole. So can't report to you and tell you how that looks.
All right. Well, hopefully you're safe.
Well, I'll tell you, even though you did make it known that that's not to be used, I'm still going to use it.
I know.
I'm still going
You're
to do it.
blatant disregard for your own well-being.
But, it's just a couple squirts, getting in there. I feel like it's the
little
bleach is
squirt
like,
never hurt.
yeah, a little squirt never hurt, but a lot of squirt gets everywhere.
So today we are going to talk about family dynamics. So it's going to be a little bit more interpersonal, not just general. We're going to talk about our upbringings and family dynamics and how it grew and shaped us because we both are slightly estranged from our families. You had, I would say, a much closer relationship with your family than I did from what I know of you growing up. But I think it's always nice to share your story, especially with family, because it's so convoluted and a lot of times sucks. And then people are like, oh, maybe my family's not that bad.
Or even being related, right?
Everybody goes through this.
And that's another thing too with like a lot of these conversations we're having and some of the comments we've had. I feel like, it's easy for somebody to look at, let's say, my status or even where you're at and put you on a pedestal and think that everything is just sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
And so I think when you have these types of discussions and we talk about the dynamics of family or how relationships or whatever, I think it also normalizes how much people's normal struggles in families is very similar to dynamics where someone can hear your story today and feel like, damn, I'm very much in that scenario, or hear my stories too and feel that way as well. So I think these conversations are good to be had. So I'm excited to talk about the family dynamic.
For sure. So first question is, what role did you play in your family growing up, and how do you think it shaped the person you became?
Am I answering first?
Yeah, whoever wants.
Well, I mean, for me specifically, I was the oldest, right? So I think that obviously the young or the oldest one, you gotta go through the trials and tribulations of all the things first. And I
Oldest
feel
of
like
how many?
3.
Okay.
Well, I guess, okay, so I also was raised in a home where I have a different dad than my sisters. And then their dad already had a kid before. So I don't know how much I intertwine him in, because obviously he was a stepbrother to me, but then my mom and my sister's dad, they are no longer together. So I don't really chat with him anymore. And he always would come on occasion. So I kind of don't involve him as much as he would be a part of our dynamic even to this day, because my sisters are going to consider him their brother. So I guess you could say 4, but at the same time, I always just secluded him in the sense that he wasn't in enough of the day-to-days. He didn't live with us. My sisters lived with me, and their dad was there, and then obviously my mom. So that dynamic, if I was looking at it from that lens, it was 3. So 2 sisters and then 1 brother. So I feel like I obviously was the older brother in that dynamic. I also went through the dynamics of the first kid to have to go through, high school and dealing with, getting in trouble for different things. I feel like what my youngest sister had to go through, by the time you're the youngest, it's like, oh, we've already been here. You probably have they're a lot more lackadaisical
Yeah.
about how, structured they are with discipline and all that. So I think I definitely went through the ringer more
You
than
got it
any
the
got
hardest.
it the hardest out of all of them. And then on top of that too, I'm also the boy. Get to the younger ones, and then they're girls, and then their dad's going to be a lot softer. So I think the role I played was the example for a lot of things, I would say, in correlation to that.
Yeah. I was the youngest, so opposite. I have 1 older brother. I have had a myriad of stepbrothers and sisters because my dad has been married so many times.
And see, so like, okay, that's perfect. Like, how much would you involve them as your like?
I wouldn't, because it was never long enough to make a meaningful impact in my life, especially considering that I only had visitation with my dad every other weekend. So he might have had, like, because the mom had full custody of the kids, so he might have spent more time with those kids than he did with me, because I only saw him every other weekend growing up.
Yeah, and that's usually how that dynamic works, right? My sisters obviously had both their parents. They never had to have the split until they divorced when 19 years of marriage. So their household dynamic never looked any different. And I also had my dad, where, like, similar to you, where I only went to his house when I was younger on the weekends. So you what you're saying makes sense in the correlation of, like, you don't involve them as much because you didn't have enough interaction. And then what age group were you around these kids?
My dad has been married 6 times. No, 5.
So
He's working on the 6th.
So, okay, let's say 5, but how many kids in that 5?
1 had 3, 1 had 1, 1 has 1 now, 1 has 3.
So there's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, so in the dynamic of your dad, your mom, how many kids were established in that?
So my mom only had my brother and I. My dad only had my brother and I. No, that's a lie. My dad did not only have my brother and I. I'm about to air my dirty laundry. Let's go. My dad had 2 other children outside of wedlock. He wrote me a jailhouse confessional when he was locked up, because I got really mad at him because he was asking me to be his outside liaison to the world. He was like trying to have me be his fucking errand boy. I'm 21 years old. I'm in college. I'm working full time. I have a partner and an apartment, and I have a life. And I was getting pissed at him, like, fuck you. You did this to yourself. It's not. And because he was getting snippy with me when I wasn't doing certain things. So I cut him off, and he sent me like a 9-page manifesto, basically detailing all of the wrongs he's done in his life. And I'm sad that I don't have it anymore. I threw it out in one of my moves in a haste of rage. But he admitted in that letter that he had 2 different daughters from 2 different women who to this day are still married to the men that they were married with while they had an affair with my dad. They think they're the fathers, and the daughters think that
That's their dad.
Yes.
But it's really your dad.
Yes. And then he gave me their names, and I looked them up on Facebook. And I told my brother about it, and he was adamant that we reached out to them. And I hid those names. I didn't show him the names. I didn't show him anything, because I made the decision for us to disallow him to reach out to them, because I felt like it was inappropriate. These girls are in their 20s at this point. It was inappropriate for us to step in and like ruin this entire family dynamic, because we now have this information that has been known. Like, I felt
Too
like
much time had passed.
I didn't want to fuck up somebody's life. Could you imagine being 25 years old and finding out your dad's not your dad? Like, let them live the lie.
And their dad didn't even know either?
No.
How do you look at those kids and say they're your own?
I don't know. I mean, I only look them up on Facebook very gently. They both live in other states now. But so yes, my dad did have two other kids. But growing up in the family, I was like the good girl, the star. I was like straight A student, fucking cheerleader, class president, graduated with honors, valedictorian, fucking. But the entire time, it all just came so easy to me to be that good at everything. But I also always felt this like it shaped me because I always felt this innate sense of like, I don't love this. I don't love this, like, this is what I have to be doing. Like, I just want to do what I want to do. But I was so impressionable that anytime I spoke up about what I wanted for my own life, I let the opinions, thoughts, and feelings of others repress my desires. So I just kept on the choo-choo train of what they call life. And that's why I feel like I got married so young and I did all these things because I was just living the version of life that those people wanted me to. And it didn't get to my like way adult life where I woke up and I was like, this is the one fucking shot you get. So do the things that you want to do. So it did shape me a lot. But yeah, my dad's fucked up.
So technically, you would say just you and your brother then, because that was that.
Well, my brother got kicked out of the house at the age of 13. My mom made him go live with my dad because he was smoking weed.
But still, you guys had the same parents.
Yeah, but so from 13 on, I was like a single child because my brother lived with my dad.
And it was just you and your mom then.
And my dad lived in Florida. Yeah. No, my mom and my stepdad. She got remarried when I was like 5 till the time I was 18. And I'm sorry, he had 2 other kids, but he really was estranged with them until after my mom and him split. They were twins, a boy and a girl.
So all the way up until 13, it was you and your brother and your mom
and my stepdad,
and not your dad.
Yeah,
were they ever married?
We just saw him every other weekend. Yeah, they were married. They got together in high school.
And then they were divorced by when?
When I was 3, my mom was 30.
Oh, you were 3 years old?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so it was super early.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, and I feel like obviously that, that dynamic changes a lot of things too, because even for me, like my dad was never married to my mom. It was my mom was underage, was at a club that she wasn't supposed to be at, got knocked up that night, and then 7 months later hit him up and said she was pregnant. I mean,
you're a prom night dumpster baby?
Not prom night, just at a club. I mean, shit.
Club night dumpster baby?
Not even of age.
Have you ever seen that Family Guy episode?
Don't they call that a bastard?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I am.
You're
just a classic good old bastard.
A
Jesus. And it's like, oh, you call me 7 months later, I'm pregnant. Oh, that's classic. So my dad was never married to my mom, so I never had that dynamic of being in that. But my mom only had a kid with him. That was it. And then he had his own later down the road. And then my mom got remarried when I was 5. And then that was with my stepdad. So from 5 all the way up until I was about 19 or 20, they were married. And then obviously they conceived my 2 sisters. And that's kind of the household we lived. So kind of similar to yours, where you had a stepdad, you had your mother, and then you had your brother.
Yeah.
Same thing with me. I had a stepdad, my mom, and then my 2 sisters. The difference was their dad was the one that my mom was married to. That wasn't my dad. So I was the outcast in the sense of my dad wasn't living in our household, where you had both parents at least up until 3.
Yeah. Up until my really fond years that I remember.
How old's your brother?
He's 3 years older than me.
So he was 6.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, and you didn't really, not enough childhood to remember like what that dynamic looked like. It was more of the stepdad involved than it was your real dad.
Yeah.
But he was still involved in your life, or he just not in the house.
My dad?
Yeah.
To an effect. Like we only saw him every other weekend, and then around the time I was 12, he moved down to Florida. So I only saw him maybe once a year or something like that.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, but we have a good relationship now. It's just different, very different. In your household when you were growing up, how was conflict handled, and do you feel like you inherited that communication style from your family?
I mean, I definitely grew up in a strict household, so I feel like a lot. I think there could be some mannerisms that I've picked up. I think more so with my mom with like the cleanliness and stuff like that. But I think being raised in a house where I didn't have my dad and was my stepdad, I feel like a lot of the times it was strict. Very strict. And then my dad and my stepdad were both cops. So I grew up around cops all my life. So you know how that can be.
Wait, I have a side question. So you were a prom night dumpster baby. You need to watch the Family Guy clip. It's a song.
Prom night.
And it's like the baby that comes out of the trash can. He's like swinging his umbilical cord. And he's like, I'm just a prom night dumpster baby. So it's in my head right now. That is you. Anyways, Did he want to be involved with you
Yeah,
since?
so I mean, our the in the beginning stages of that, my stepdad and my dad were like close
Okay.
friends. Yeah, so even though my that was a one night stand, my dad was very much in my life
Okay.
up until like my younger years. And I mean, even so close where when we would have Christmas, he would stay the night at our house and the night before so he could wake up and be there. Where that dynamic changed and when my dad no longer became part of my life was he got to 40 and he still hadn't been married, and then he finally met somebody. And back in those days, he met someone online, and she was like, I don't know if it was a cam model or doing explicit stuff on. I remember long afterwards, we found a magazine, and she was in, and it was like showing nudes in there. So I don't know what she was doing back then. I don't know when people were doing the nude stuff, like almost like a Playboy type of thing. And I think he was just infatuated by what she did and how she looked and all those things. And then on top of that, too, he hadn't been married. So everyone else up until that point, I was first and they were second.
Mm.
Whether that caused issues with their relationship, he always prioritized me. It wasn't until he got married to her that things started to shift. And she had this like vendetta against my mother. I don't know what it was, if she was insecure. She also took a lot of pills. And so I think in her mind, she always felt like my mom was going to take my dad from her.
Even though they were never together.
They were never together. I mean, even when they first got together, my dad and my they're not even married anymore. She invited him over for dinner to like welcome her to the family type thing, and she played it off like she liked my mom, but she never secretly did. I remember when I was younger, just like you said, I'd go there on the weekends, and so my mom would check in just to make sure I was good. And there would be a couple times where she changed their voicemail, and one of the times it said the Zimmerman Bank is closed. So like when my mom would call, it would go to voicemail, it would say that, almost like insinuating that my mom was calling for money.
Yeah.
Another time she changed it to Mexican music because my mom's Mexican. So there was just a lot of underlining
Passive
things.
aggressive.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot of underlining things where I think inevitably it got to a place where my dad didn't want to deal with the conflict. And so as a coward, he just chose to eliminate me. And no longer have me in my life. I mean, that's what it really came down to in the longevity of it. I think he wasn't able to face her, or he didn't want the problems. And the easiest way to avoid the problem was just to eliminate having to deal with me.
How old were you at this time?
I was probably like 8.
So it was probably really confusing.
Yeah, but I also, when I was there, I never enjoyed being there. You know, I don't know if it was because of her or what, but I'd rather be home. I don't know if you felt that way, but and I'm sure a lot of kids do. Like when they go to their whoever's the separation, and a lot of
No,
the times
I
it's,
liked it because my dad always did cool shit,
Mm.
and he tagged me along.
Yeah, see, I think I was just comfortable at home. I didn't have a reason to want to go there, and so when I went there, it wasn't anything I enjoyed that much. I mean, it was cool, but it wasn't. I'd rather be home with my mom. You know, so obviously it didn't affect me that he kind of just disassociated himself. I never struggled with that. You know, I know some people don't have, their dad in their life and they go off the deep end and it fucks them up mentally, but I don't know, just that never messed with me. And I don't know if that's because the household I had at home with my stepdad at the time, even though he wasn't my dad, and my mom was still a functionable one, that I didn't feel like, oh, going to my dad's was better, because it certainly wasn't. It was the other way around. So, yeah, my dad was very much in tune. That's why it was kind of even more shocking when it got to that place where he just was completely disconnected. But I also say to myself too, he didn't have his dad in his life, so why keep that vicious cycle continuing? I remember there was one point where I was getting a little bit older and he's like, he doesn't return my calls, and my mom's like, so you just stop talking to him because he doesn't return your calls? He's a kid, like he's doing his normal things. Like, just because he doesn't return your calls, you just all of a sudden say, I'm gonna not be a father anymore. And that's kind of, I mean, to this day, I mean, he hasn't reached out once to me or anything like that. So I think it was just,
It's been 22 years.
yeah, it's been a lot longer. It's been
Yeah.
a long time. So, the funneling of that is just weird because he's still around. He talks to my sister's dad to this day.
That's insane.
Yeah, there's so many weird loopholes with, we could dive into more of those with my family dynamic that just makes things so extremely bizarre with some of those things. Like, how can you be that close and still decide? And then he also has 2 kids, because when he got married, he ended up having 2 kids of his own. So it's like, and he's fulfilling the father role there.
So you have 2 half siblings that you don't even know.
Two half on my side and then 2 half on the other side from both parents.
And you're close with
technically.
one side, but not the other.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were like, no, I don't think the second one I ever even saw. The first one was maybe like an infant or something, like at that point. So I don't really know them at all. I wouldn't be able to attach a face to them at all.
I mean, one could say that you do have daddy issues because you love when women call you daddy.
You know what? I was actually asking this question. Like, do you think that because I didn't have my dad or just a lot of the father figure, that that's why I gravitate more towards women?
I I think for sure, like my brother has mommy issues. He's never been with a woman that is not a mom.
Yeah, but see
But like
but that
maybe you
dynamic's different.
gravitate towards women who have daddy issues because you do too. No, I don't know.
But
I
would you say that I have daddy issues?
no.
So, how does that work? Like, okay, like you said, your brother with the mom thing and he dates like the mom aspect, but that's a mom. I didn't have mom
No,
issues.
I
Mine
know.
was the opposite. So, how does it work when your dad's not in your life and you're a male? Because usually it's your dad's not in your life and you're a female, then you have
Yeah,
daddy
no, I do
issues.
think it's because you are a girl's guy. You're a girl's guy. Like you would rather hang out with the girls than hang out with the guys. Like
Hmm.
you just get along with girls better. And you grew up more around women. You had your two sisters and your mom. That's why I think you get along with women and like to converse and chat with them more than you do with dudes. Like not to say you don't get along with men because you do, but I think you identify and relate more kind of emotionally with how women think. Maybe just because you've been immersed with so much estrogen in your life.
Because even when I was younger in high school, I had four best friends and they were all girls.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were younger than me too. So I've always just felt like that's more of a, not comforting, but more of
Safer,
a relaxed
maybe.
place. Like I
Yeah.
feel like I'm more in my vibe
Maybe you
there.
do feel inherently safer with women than men, and it's like a subconscious thing that you don't even realize because you trust them more.
Or like you said too, the raising of that, because I didn't have a lot of interactions with older men throughout my time period of guidance or anything like that. I was always from my mom.
Hmm.
Even raised with my stepdad, he was always my stepdad. He was never my dad. I never called him that, never thought of him that way, never saw him that way. So I didn't go to him for advice. I didn't confine in him for anything. It was always my mom. So I think that probably plays a role in it now because I have guy friends, but not too many. But I also don't care too much about the conversations being had a lot of the times with the men than I prefer with the conversation I have with women.
Yeah. When was the first time you realized you had to start putting up some type of boundaries with your family, and what were they?
Well, I mean, actually, I don't really I haven't really established any because I think that up until of recent, when I stopped talking to my mom, and I don't really have that dynamic now, I didn't have any boundaries. I grew up in a strict home, so I think there was enough, not necessarily from my mom, more so from my dad, and I think my mom, because he was superior to her as the male figure, I think my mom might have had some resentment towards the fact that he was very strict on me and hard on me for things where she wanted to jump in but he wouldn't let her, and so there was times where she'd just cry in the room
And
when I
this is
was being
her husband, your stepdad. Yeah.
correct. And so I think that I just was raised in a household where there was so much force being inflicted that I was fearful of things. I didn't act out. I never ran away. I never did anything like got in trouble with the law, like none of those things. And I think that was because I was inflicted with so much fear
Hmm.
that I didn't do those things, which is kind of crazy, right? Because a lot of people rebel when they're in restricted homes or especially with the stepdad. Like I never did any of those things. Looking back, I'm like a lot of the restrictions I had, I feel like a lot of kids would have rebelled. And I definitely didn't do that. I always followed the rules. Like, we talked about in the last episode with the drug stuff. Like, I also was always coming home fearful that he was going to catch me, but I just had to make sure that he never knew. And luckily, he never did. I never got in trouble for doing any type of substance. They never knew. I remember one time I came home that prom night when we were talking about the ecstasy for the first time. I'm fucking rolling balls, looking at him. I'm like having the time of my life. I had the time of my life. He had no clue. And in my head, I'm like, you're a cop, shouldn't you know? But he probably didn't do any drugs. So I don't think he had any idea. So I didn't start to, or I'm never really started to. I think that now if I recircled and had a rekindling with my mom, that's where the boundaries would be starting to be inflicted. But I think the boundary was hard to enforce because you look at it like that's your mother, and I was always like, oh, whatever she says, like she's superior to me, so it's her way or no way. I don't think until I got older and then we started to have our issues, and now as I've reflected and I've gone through my therapy and grown for myself, where I now look at it like if she was brought in back into my life, I would instill boundaries of what needs to be done between the two of us, and obviously we could hash that out because I think that's important now as an adult, and I run myself a certain way that it's not just, oh, that's my mom, so I'm forever a kid in her eyes, and I'm gonna act that way too, and I'm gonna confine in everything she says, and it's her way or no way. I think that's where a lot of conflict started to arise as you get older. Is like I don't see her as she's superior to me. I see her as an equal now. I'm still going to respect her like my mother and still treat her that way, and the respect that comes with that. But I think the boundaries are important, because I think that's why I'm where I'm at now, because there was a lot of times where things were just happening and I just kind of said nothing. And I feel like you build that resentment over time because I didn't enforce what I felt was necessary as certain boundaries. So I definitely don't have any, and I didn't have any then. But I also was in a family where we were so close knit, and so I feel like the boundaries weren't always necessary because we always got along. I think as our personalities developed, my sisters got older, I got older, my mom got older, she's divorced now. Who knows what she's dealing with internally? I think that's where we started to have a lot of family issues later down the road, was because the old dynamic of it being free spirited with her kids and all that worked. But as you get older, people's personalities change. I think that's where the boundaries needed to start being enforced.
Yeah, that makes sense.
What about you?
As a kid, I always felt, I alluded to it a little bit earlier, that like my parents, my mom and stepdad specifically, like my dad wasn't a part of the decision making really for the moments of my life or things that I wanted to do. I just always felt like they were shutting me down from my growth. Like I remember specifically in 10th grade, there was the opportunity to go to college and get your associates as you were in high school. So when you graduated with your high school diploma, you also could have an associate's. And I was like, I want to fucking do that. I want to become a PTA so I can start working the moment I graduate high school and then work towards getting my doctor of physical therapy. Because at 16 is when I decided I want to be a physical therapist. That's when you're a sophomore. And I remember my mom wouldn't let me do it. Your parents had to sign off on it. She wouldn't let me fucking do it. I remember one of my best friends at the time, around the same age, wanted to take me to the Bahamas. It was the coach of my softball team. I was really good friends with her daughter, and she was loaded. And they had a trip to Atlantis, and because she wasn't married, she wanted to bring she was the only child. She wanted to let her bring a friend. My mom wouldn't let me. And it's just like a series of like things like that, where my mom and stepdad dynamic was like she was the matriarch of, as far as like they were her children and she's going to make the decisions, even though he was her husband. And like I looked at him like my stepdad, not like my dad, like you said, but I still think of him as a really prominent father figure in my life. But I never like associated with him with dad, So I remember the moment I could start making decisions for myself to grow my fucking life. You bet I did. I bought my first house when I was just turned 19 years old. I bought my second house when I was 24. Like, I was like, I'm off to the races and you're finally not going to hold me back. And it just became this like mantra that I told myself of, I remember when I was 15 or 16, they wouldn't let me get the school clothes that I wanted. Like, I was like, they gave me, like, we had a budget and she's like, well, you can't shop here. You need to shop here, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I'm going to get my own job so I can buy the clothes that I want. It was just like at every turn, they weren't letting me reach my full potential or be the person that I wanted to be. And so I just found ways to do it myself. So I started working at 16 years old, and like not many people did that in high school. And like I worked in college full time, lived in my house that I bought, graduated in 3 years with my bachelor's, then went on and did postgraduate work. Like it was like from the time I turned 18 and I moved out, it was like, bitch, you're on your own because nobody's going to do for you the things that you want. So I created some pretty hard protective boundaries of not letting people's like opinions influence me. Granted, I still, like I said, got married like really young, but that was more like, this is what society thinks I should do. But I was hard-headed about wanting to make my own decisions, and I like stopped listening to other people's input. At 18, you really don't know what you're doing. You still need guidance.
Yeah, of course.
But I was like repelling it all because I was so mad that I missed so many opportunities because they wouldn't let me, that I just kind of put this wall up of, I'm going to do what I want. If I have the money and resources, time and effort, I'm old enough to do it, go fuck yourself. So that's kind of like how.
And you
it
moved
changed.
out, how old were you?
I just turned 19 when I bought my first house. Yeah.
Yeah, see, I think I moved out like around the same time, like 19, 20. But then I don't know, for me, boundaries wasn't, I didn't think about those things. And I think it just took more time through my journey of having people fuck me over or dealing with shitty people or dealing with life in general, where I started to backtrack now, where I've put a lot of work in, where I talk about those and I reinforce the boundaries a lot more. Because as I look back in my younger years, I'm like, I didn't have any boundaries. Like if someone did me dirty, I was like, oh, they're just a shitty person, and just moved on. I didn't really reflect on if I had a boundary, would that have, changed the dynamics? Also, too, when I was living at home up until like 1920, it was one of those things where it's their rules, like, and I didn't have anywhere to go. So I didn't rebel on that. Like I remember when I got my first tattoo, I had it got on my chest, and then I got my first one on my back, and then my second one on my chest, like within a couple months. And so I was hiding it because I was living at home. And I remember one of the days I was brushing my teeth in the bathroom, and I saw someone walk by, and I didn't realize anyone was going to be home, and I had my shirt off. And it was my mom. She walked by, and I saw her off the corner of my eye. So I turned, and then so she saw the front. So she saw the back one first, and then the front. And she like broke down in tears. She was still married at the time that I got my first tattoo, and was just like, "Oh my God!" Like, she's like, "Is that a tattoo?" And I was thinking in my head, "No, mom, it's a fucking henna."
Yeah.
Like, what do you think it is? And yeah, she just bawled her eyes. So when I lived at home, it was strict rules. I followed them because I didn't have anywhere else to go. So if I wanted to break the rules, like, where am I going to go? So after that, it was like no more tattoos. So I just listened to that. So I didn't start making decisions for myself until I was on my own, because she said, when you're on your own, you could do whatever you want. And so when I moved out and I made that decision to move on my own, then obviously that's where I got tattoos too. But I was always under their rules, every single thing that I did, and I never rebelled. I never tried to do things like I
I
always
didn't either.
yeah, I never was one of those people. So I guess that structure of not falling out of place there, I can look at it now and allow myself to say and reflect, like, it's kept me, structured with everything else that I did, because in the household that I was raised, it was strict. I could see where somebody would want to rebel and do all those things, but I guess I always looked at it like, well, I'm doing life in a way that's not hurting me in any way, so I'm just going to continue to follow. I never felt like anything was too strict. I mean, if I look back, some of the things were crazy to think like that I was having to do, but I didn't look at it in those moments of like, oh, the grass is greener somewhere else. I'm going to go do it here and be living at friend's house or sleeping on the couch. I didn't
Right.
feel
It
like that
wasn't
was.
worth it.
I didn't feel like that was necessary.
So I want to pivot. We both said, like, early on, we didn't really create boundaries until we were free to do so. I want to talk, I'll share like kind of some boundaries that I've developed now with my family. And then I know, because like my boundaries kind of really started when I got my first divorce, and then a lot with Steven and grief. And then you have your boundaries with OnlyFans and stuff. But I had to create boundaries around my family when I was getting my first divorce. I've mentioned that my family and his family tried to do an intervention on me. And like I paid for my college, I paid for all of my bachelor's degree out of pocket. Like I was working full time, I paid $54,000 for school as I did it in 3 years. And then I took out $217,000 of student loans to do my post and my graduate school. It was all my money. Like I just realized like nobody's helping me. Zero. I had zero financial support from any of my family. I was doing it all myself. Car payment, cell phone, everything. And then I was in grad school with all these kids that were like 3 or 4 years younger than me, because it took me a lot longer to get in than them. And like all of them live at home, or they have their parents still pay for all their shit. And I remember feeling so jealous and so envious. And I was so mad. And I tried to like petition to the school, because until you're 24 years old, you have to report your parents' financial income on your FAFSA unless you're emancipated by the state. And I was like trying to petition to like say, I live on my own, I have my own mortgage, my parents don't support me, but I had to still put their financial data, which like hurt me financially from getting aid. And I put up a lot of boundaries, like just to kind of like not let their input change what I'm doing with my life. But then when Steven died, or just like throughout the rest of my life, it was kind of like, if you're not supporting me in a way that's like you have merit to like have a vote on what I'm doing, like you don't get to make a decision for my life. And I just always felt like the Midwest mentality is like repressive. I'm like, oh, you shouldn't do this, you shouldn't do that, don't dream that big, don't go move, don't go, like, fuck you. And I just was like, I cannot believe that you really want someone to live that simple of a life, because that's what you come from. So I kind of have this fuck you, pay me mentality of like, if you're not contributing to my financial success, you don't get a say in what I get to do. And then when Steven died, even more so, like he and I were very much like bonded in that like, fuck you, I'm gonna do what I want. Like that motherfucker did whatever he wanted. And that's how he lived his whole life. And then thereafter, just with people being inappropriate about telling me what I should and shouldn't do in regards to my husband. But I had to put a wall up financially around my family. Like people were asking me for money. And I don't mix money with family. Like unless you got in an accident, you're dying, and like you're about to lose your house or like something crazy, I just feel like It muddies things. I've given my dad money many times, and it's made me really uncomfortable trying to ask for it back. And just like until I get it back, I'm like stressed about it, and I just really don't like it. So I've just agreed to never fucking do that again.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, see, and I will also say, like, the way that I was raised, it's also structured me in a good way where when I was on my own, I feel like certain dynamics, like, I can look back and go, yeah, I was strict, but also it gave me structure, you know? And so maybe being raised by a cop with the whole, like, you know, do, like that kind of thing gives me the structure in that sense, even if it was when I reflect that some of it was a little bit extreme. I can look back on those now and say, well, it's given me structure when I was on my own. I felt more motivated and dedicated to what I was doing because I had those structures in place. But also, too, when we were younger, I feel like, you know, I would be curious to know how people are raised now in the dynamics of, you know, social media time, where how much is going to school influenced. You know, I was raised where, like, go to school and get your degree and do all those other things. And I think I was in that beginning stage of, like, I don't want to do that. You know, like, I don't want to go to school and get a degree. And I dropped out of college right after the first year because I didn't want to do it. That just didn't align with what I felt was my vision for the long term. So I'd be curious to know how people are raised now in this generation. Is it still influenced to go to college and, you know, out of high school, or kids just straight going to, I'm going to be an entrepreneur right away, do social media and find my way, or are kids still doing the old school route of you graduate and the first thing you do
I
is you
bet
go right?
both, but a lot more social, like not straight college now. I bet it's probably like 50-50, whereas before it was maybe like 95-5, like the non-traditional route of people who are looking to do something after high school.
Because I think when I questioned that, it was like, no, you got to go to school. You know, I was really forced to, like, the whole school nature of, like, you got to get a degree. That's how you know you're successful. And if you don't go to school, you're not going to be successful. And it's like, you know, by the time 4 years had passed of people doing that, and I was doing the social media, I'm like, I had friends that had these degrees with no
Right.
job.
They couldn't get one.
No,
Yeah.
and I'm sure that probably is still very similar now. So I'd be curious to know how much that dynamic changed. Because even when you're younger, you know, you go out and you play outside and hoop till the sun goes down. It's like so many of those different dynamics. I'd be curious to know how much different people are raised than what they were raised back in our time period with having a lot more social interactions, because now everyone's on their tablets. Like kids at 5, they got a fucking tablet. Shut them up. Here you go.
Yeah.
You know, so I'm sure the dynamics of how people are raised are a lot differently now than what it used to be.
So we have our family that we're born with, and then we have our family that we choose.
Now, what would you reference that? What would that reference mean?
Like your chosen family, that people who aren't your family by blood, but they feel like family to you. Whether it's how they make you feel, you make them feel, how your lives are intertwined. Like a spouse is a chosen family, right? I have friends that I feel like are chosen family. Like, do you have those people in your life that you feel like are as important to you as you would consider them like family members, but they're not by blood?
I think throughout my time period, there's been waves of it, and then they're no longer there. Because I wouldn't really say, you know, there's anyone that longevity wise from back then to now that I could sit there and say that's the same. I've had people that were close to me where they supplemented those things, but they're no longer there. So I don't have a long-standing person or people that I would say outside of my family dynamic that would be like extended family for me.
Yeah. I have a handful. Like I've been friends with Lindsay since we were 21, so 15 years. She's like my family. Angelica's like a sister to me that I never had. My brother's girlfriend, she's like a sister to me. And so I feel like a lot of people that I let in at this point in my life at 36 years old, like anyone that's really close with me feels like family. Like I could probably name 6 people. They feel like my chosen relative. Like I call them like their family, talk to them more than my own family. Really, the only person I talk to a ton is my brother, and then my dad next. I don't talk to my mom at all right now. But they all just fill that void and that need that I have for companionship in a close way that I don't get from my family.
Yeah, and I have friends that are long-standing, but I don't talk to them on a daily basis. So I don't know how much you are intertwining the family dynamic of outside of blood, like with Lindsay or like Angelica or stuff like that. You know, how much consistency do you need from someone like that to consider them like the secondary or another extended part of your family, because most of those types of people, I mean, I'm assuming you don't talk to them on a daily basis, right?
No, I mean, I have probably like those 6 people in rotation that at least every week I talk to like 3 of them. Either FaceTime, on the phone, sending voice messages. And it just like, I don't know, those relationships, because they're by choice, feel more rewarding to me than the ones that are just inherently there that you are obligated to have.
Or you feel obligated. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, and those, like I said, those types of people have come in waves. Like obviously, you've been a close friend of mine of recent. So for me, that you would be put into that realm because it's more current and it's present in my life now. But I've had friends that I had long standing with, and then I don't speak to them at all anymore. But they played a role in my life at some point that was like I would kind of consider extended family, almost like when I was engaged. Like people that I would have had at my wedding. If I look at it now, none of those motherfuckers would be in my wedding at all. None of them. So I don't have too much extensiveness there. I do have friends from high school that I still talk to and I'm still friends with, but I don't know that I would consider them like extended family at the end of the day. But if I saw them, we'd pick up right back where we left off. But I don't feel close enough where I would have like conversations about like deeper ended stuff. Like those girls you mentioned, you would be talking to them about your personal life per se, right? I mean,
Yeah.
you're close enough to them in that nature.
We both don't talk to our moms right now. I know we've touched on it before, but like, do you feel that there's any future for you guys to have a relationship?
Yes and no. I look at it like with my dad. Like the more time that's gone on with my dad, like let me give you an example. Like when I don't know how many years ago this was. It was back when I was engaged. I remember I got a message from this lady, and it was my dad's new girlfriend, and this is how I knew he was no longer with his ex-wife, and she had been with him for several years and never knew I existed. And then
Which is insane.
I don't know how she found out, and she was like beside herself. Like we've been dating or together for 2-3 years. I have 2 kids, you have 2 kids, and you just never once mentioned that you had another kid that was just floating in life. And so she reached out to me, and she's the only one that's done this in all this time period. And I think her goal was to rekindle us. I don't know if she felt that motherly instinct of like, she has 2 kids. How could you go this long without telling me? And she didn't tell him that she was reaching out to me. She sent me pictures of him to see what he like currently looked like, type thing. And I just said, I appreciate you for doing that, but it's his job. It's not yours. And it wouldn't feel genuine if you're rekindling us. I don't even know you. Like you just had a small fraction of your time period in his life, and now you're wanting to do that. So I never felt that was genuine. I felt like, but also at the same time, the more time that goes on with my dad, I'm like, what for? Like you've went this long. Why would I all of a sudden just want you in my life? So for my dad's sake, I don't think that there's any type of, for me, any desire to want to rekindle with him. Obviously, my mom's more of a recent thing, and to piggyback off the boundaries and all the different dynamics of what led us to this point. I think at some point the conversation will be had. What ends up happening after the conversation will dictate, is there a relationship that continues after. But I think that I'm at that point now where boundaries and talking about those things are important, where I felt like before the relationship started to crumble, a lot of our dynamics is like when we would get together as a family, it just somehow led to an argument or my mom getting pissed off about something and causing an issue. And it was just, when is that going to happen? Because it would always happen. And I think, again, the characteristics of everyone's personalities getting older. My sister's got kids now. My youngest sister's getting older. She's got her own personality. We see our mom in a different light. We're not kids anymore. You're bound to have, confliction if there's not boundaries set up there. So I think that at some point, I've asked myself, like, how much time is going to go by where I say to myself, do I even, like, too much time has gone by. What now?
Yeah.
And my oldest sister, which is the middle one of the 3, she's the only one that I consistently have conversation with now. And I've had this conversation with her. And I've said, what would that look like? Like, okay, we have the conversation, but are there things that are going to change? And that's where I would sit there and say boundaries need to start being enforced, where I would say, like, these are certain things that have happened. We need to change that, or we should be able to have a voice and have our own opinions to things and you not get offended by it. But also time has passed where maybe she would be accepting of that. I just haven't.
When you guys were talking, how often did you talk?
Up until I stopped talking to my mom, I mean, almost every day. My mom was like my best friend.
So that's a huge change.
100%.
And it's been 2 years
And
since
I'm her only son, so I'm sure obviously that reflects that way. And I've told you too. I mean, my mom texts me all the time. It just hasn't felt right
Yeah.
to do it. But will it ever? I don't know. It's just one of those things where more time goes on, am I deflecting it, or am I just not ready to have the conversation? Or I've said to myself, like, outside of the OnlyFans things and what I was doing in that sense, I feel like there was a lot of other underlining things too. But I say to myself now, okay, with what I'm currently doing, is that a representation that you're proud of? And I mean, obviously, I would say no, because my mom doesn't necessarily reflect anything that I'm doing. Christian home, raised in a Christian home, like all the things that I'm doing would be a sin to her. So how do you accept a son? Let's say we have a conversation and we hash everything out, talk about boundaries, everything like that. How do you accept someone that's doing things that are completely against everything you believe in? And that's where I've said, like, are you going to hide me as your son now? I've already been hidden by my dad. So is that how that's going to look? And that's played in my head too. Like, okay, all this time has passed. We hash everything out. Now, when we're in family dynamics and you go post us, are you going to post me and tag me? Or are you going to hide away from that because if someone clicks, they can see exactly what I do? So those are weighing factors for me when I think about that dynamic. A lot of time has gone on where I'm like, there's times where I'm like, more times than not where I don't even miss my mom, which is kind of sad to say. I don't know if that's where I've just gotten used to,
I feel that. Yeah.
the dynamic of like not having my dad for so long, and now I don't have my mom, so I'm on my own. I'm also an adult, so I'm like, the more time that has gone on, it's made me feel less emotional to those things. Like when I read a text from her and she says she misses me, or she wants to fix the problems, or she needs me, or whatever. Not that I'm heartless towards the idea, but I'm like, it's so much time has gone on. I'm just
Absence is not making the heart grow fonder here.
no, it's not. And so part of me says, does the conversation just need to happen so that way we have a direct answer of where it goes? It just hasn't felt like the right timing for it. Again, is there ever a right time for something like that? So I think inevitably at some point the conversation is going to be had, and that's where I feel like I can open myself up with my boundaries and things that I didn't necessarily say back then that I feel like I can say now with my transparency. And so it's a matter of how's that going to look into the future. If you sat your mom down now with all the things that you've, dealt with her, and how you had said, like, you keep the conversation going or keep the relationship going by, checking in or whatever, or she was checking in based off your Facebook and all that. Like, if you sat her down and said, hey, this needs to happen, this is a boundary of mine, X, Y, and Z, and you hashed everything, do you think your mom's going to change?
No, because I already tried.
Yeah.
So like today I had 2 ideas for the podcast, and I come over Devin's house and I was like, we're going to do family dynamics because I'm heated about my mom. I wanted to hash some shit. But I was thinking about, she started watching my Instagram again. She was watching my Facebook. I disassociated my Facebook from my Instagram specifically so that she couldn't watch me passively, and she would have to reach out to me if she wanted to talk to me. And then it triggered her to reach out. And then we talked 3 times, January, February, March, or May. I don't know, 4 times total. The last time we talked was Mother's Day. I called all of the times we talked. I haven't heard from her since. And I was just like starting to get mad, like, oh, now you're back on Instagram, because she like commented on one of my posts, and then I saw she viewed my stories, and I was just like, you're really that much? My friend actually like nailed the head on the fucking, hit it on the head. She's a narcissistic coward. Like, she only thinks of herself. And she's so afraid of confrontation that she won't talk to me about any of this. And it's like, I tried, and I was like, listen, this is why we're not talking. So I was going to text her today and just be like, hey, I just want to let you know, I'm not mad at you, but the reason why you haven't heard from me again since May is because I thought by us having that conversation, by me saying the only reason why we have a relationship is because I call you, that maybe you would start to pick up the phone.
You sent her a text?
No, I was thinking about doing it today.
And what made you feel... See, okay, great example.
Because she was watching my stuff, and I
you
was like...
You saw her watching it?
Yeah. And I was just like, you really are watching my stuff, commenting on my Instagram. I know you want to talk to me, but you still won't call me. Like, the reason why we're not talking is because you're not calling. So it's just like, I don't miss her. I don't have anything good to say about, like, with her. We don't have a relationship. We haven't had one for a really long time, since I was like 20. And it's just like, so it's been 16 years of like talking a couple of times a year, seeing each other once a year, once every couple of years. So it's like, I don't really have anything in common with you. You haven't supported me in growing into the woman who I am, because unfortunately, as much as I love my mother inherently for bringing me into this world, she's not a great role model as a woman. Not someone that I would want to look up to as far as like, and that's mean, but it's true. Like, she's inherently has to be tied to a man. She has to be in a relationship. She cannot be on her own. She's too afraid to make her own decisions. She lives this small life that she's reduced herself to be beside a man. And she used to be this vivacious woman. And I don't even think she's happy. And it's like everything that I would never want to be. And it's sad to say that. And when I talk to her, I kind of have a little bit of disgust for her situation, because I ask her, what are you doing? Same shit. One time she was off work. They had like a cybersecurity thing. It's like she works for a medical, an insurance company, and they had like a huge cyber attack that shut their system down for like 9 months. She was on paid leave. What have you done in those 9 months? You're literally on paid leave. Well, I don't know. They could call me back to work at any time, sweetie. What? Like, she just has zero desire to live a full life. And then when I talk to her and I tell her about all the cool things that I'm doing, she's just like cutting me down and saying like, well, why are you doing that? Well, Ashley, well, oh my God, it's this judgmental fucking tone. And it just honestly triggers me and reminds me of when I have a kid that was like, if it was up to you, I'd be doing nothing. Like, I am living a full fucking life and you have no input to say whether or not you approve of what I'm doing. I'm just telling you, and you're getting that luxury. But since you can't pick up the phone, you don't get it anymore. So now she can watch me on Instagram like everybody else. Like, I just feel like, and I also have a lot of resentment towards my mother because, I mean, I've let it go, but I just look at her not as like this motherly figure, because she kicked my brother out at 13 and she decided to end their relationship at that time. I've incessantly asked her, like one day on Mother's Day, all I did was bitch at her for 2 hours about why she doesn't talk to my brother. It's her responsibility to rekindle that relationship because she ruined it and she refuses to. And it's just like, you have children and you care that little about them? It just kind of like blows my mind. And I've just learned, like, I don't know if I have mommy issues or daddy issues, but I just really feel like I've taken what they've given me. I've accepted it. I've loved those parts of me that are the person who I am because of who my parents are. But I've also realized that I've shaped myself through living in my own environment much more than they did molding my environment in my younger years.
Well, how do you know if, like, in situations where when you're raised a certain way that, people go off the deep end for stuff, how do you look at those and navigate and say, I have an issue because of my dad and him not being around, right? Or my mom. Like, your mom is very much the opposite of my mom in that sense. Like, you could sit there and say a lot of cowardly things about her. I wouldn't say that about my mom because my mom is very independent, very driven. She's on social media. She does the whole thing. So we're very similar in that, which could be a lot of the reason why we butt heads. And I think as I got older, I have a lot of characteristics of my mom. My mom's very clean, like all those things. But I think as I got older and I started to have more of a voice and when I was younger, I think I conceded to my mom a lot of the times, even into the part where it got to the end where I just let her win because I knew that there was no winning. And I think I'm at a point now where it's like we either come to a solution of how we blend together or else we don't at all, because I'm tired of having to concede because you're my mom. So there's a lot of characteristics of my mom where it's not like your mom, where I couldn't sit there and go, oh, she's this or she's that or she's all those things. I think a lot of our conflict just came from the fact of there wasn't enough structured boundaries. And as I've got older, and I think towards the end, I looked at it like I needed my mother there and I was getting a business partner.
It sounds like she wants control.
Yeah. And so I think a lot of that, but I also look now like of not having me in my life, does that give her the time to reflect? And I said a lot. I've said a couple things throughout the 2 years, like maybe 2 different things, reiterating my feelings about it and being more firm about those. And I think, I'm getting texts from my mom that she misses me every day. So has she reflected from that and she sees a different picture? Because my mom's not very, very independent. She doesn't need a man. She's very vocal in that sense. I think she's got a boyfriend now, so it's a completely different dynamic. When I'm listening to what you're saying about your mom, I honestly would have no reason to want to rekindle anything with your mom if I was in your position.
Yeah.
It's like you're almost everything she isn't.
Yeah.
And what she probably wishes she could be. And so the projection comes from she never did half the shit you did. And it's like reverse, like you're almost like her mom. in a way. And so I think that's where it's distinctively different, in the dynamic of why you wouldn't want to feel the need to rekindle with her. And go ahead.
Well, you asked, how do you know, like, when there's an issue, like, rising from that? I explored all of that in therapy. And like I feel like those wounds are kind of closed and healed where I can see some of the short, like that's the reason why I was bulimic, is because I felt like I wasn't in control of my life. That's like why I started my bulimia. It felt like my release of the things I was repressed about. And I worked through all that. And my therapist was a cognitive behavioral therapist, which really the fundamental principles of that style of therapy is that all the issues you have as an adult stem from your upbringings in your childhood. And we beat like the dynamics between my mom, my dad, and my brother to like a fucking pulp. And really, I've come away with just a sense of like, I don't feel like I need to be validated by my family to feel a fulfilled life. And I can appreciate that those things are mutually exclusive, that I have parents, that they've done things for me, but their capacity for how they are involved in my life and influence my future decisions is very limited because of the person whom I want to be.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it's just because not having my dad, I never once thought in my life, oh my God, I don't have my dad, I'm less than in this category. Are there times where I reflected and said, oh, it would have been nice to have my dad? Well, when I got into bodybuilding, my dad was a bodybuilder. He did shows naturally and all those other stuff. I remember when I was younger, I went to a couple of them.
That would have been such a cool
experience. So I think experiences like that, like how much would I have learned and how much would we have connected even more in those dynamics when I was coming up with shreds and fitness was my life at that point? Like, how could you look that on the other side of the spectrum and go, man, I lived that life and my son's doing it and I'm not a part of it at all.
Yeah, that's crazy.
Because I remember I used to go, when I was younger, I would be in the little daycare while he went to the gym for an hour.
And bodybuilding is such a passionate activity. Like when it's in your blood, it's in your blood. So the fact that he didn't try to reach out to you, like as that is like a communal bonding event that you guys could have had together, just not even your show, but the whole process of it. So do you ever feel like Jay, like what's wrong with me? Like, why doesn't he want to be involved?
No, I never thought that because his actions were solely on him, had nothing to do with me. Like everything as to why we no longer speak has nothing to do with me, and I know that.
That's good.
So I think maybe that's another reason why, because I've never looked at it and go, oh, my dad's not in my life, I'm gonna go astray. I also had my stepdad, even though he wasn't, I didn't view him that way. He still provided structure. Maybe there was a lot of extra, discipline, and him not being my full dad, like real dad. I was very much, when the discipline happened, it was to the T. He didn't let loose on anything. He is, I would say, the trauma in the sense of where the line came from. When I went to therapy and I realized why I was constantly lying about things that didn't even warrant her to lie, it was just an instinctive behavior because of my past and the fear that was inflicted. Whenever I was put into a corner, I lied. So you take that into the real world, and whenever I was cornered in a situation where I was pressured to have to tell the truth, I lied because it was second nature to lie, with the idea that there's a chance that this lie will get me out of it and then I'm good. But, and I would die with the lie. So I think that when I reflect on my life now and I went through the therapy, that was the only thing that was traumatic for me, was the lying. And, I'm a person now where I tell it like it is and I'm very straightforward. But it wasn't until after my mom was in my life that I started to do the therapy extensively and really, really put back into myself of like, what do I need to be fulfilled? And what do I need to start outwardly expressing with my boundaries so that things start to align? And I think it's easy for the family members to not set boundaries with them because they're your family. And I think the longevity of ours is when things would happen, I'm like, oh, it's my mom. Like, I just got to deal with it. She'll get over it, whatever. But I just realized over time, it was just wear and tear on the dynamic of all of us as kids and my mom too. And I'm speaking after she got divorced and it was just all of us there. Because, when we had our stepdad or when my stepdad was in there was a lot more structure. She didn't have a voice. It was him doing all the rules. And, if anything, my escape was her, when if she could, come nurture me or something like that. He used to always say that I was part of the reason why they got a divorce. My mom was like, it was not you, blah, blah, blah. But I don't feed into that. Like any of those things never got instilled into my brain that I was like, oh, it's because of me for things. And that's why I said I try to understand people's dynamics, because I didn't have my dad, obviously of recent, not my mom, but I never felt like those dynamics changed me as a person where I was less than. If anything, I feel like I did more with my life not having certain dynamics that people had, like a great relationship with their dad, a great relationship with their mom. Not having those things, I feel like I was able to maneuver and do all the things I wanted just as successfully as anyone else that had, both their parents involved extensively.
I would agree. I also still feel at many intervals of my life that there's a part of me that, like, two things can be true. Like, I can be completely happy, fine on my own, not feel like I need a family network to support me in the things that I'm doing because I have my chosen family. That's my support system. And at the same time, I can be sad that maybe for pivotal moments of my life or, big things that I do wish I had stronger connections with my family to celebrate and have that communal experience and have that familial, backbone to be there with you. Like, when we opened the gym, no, none of them were there.
So like monumental things that like you
Yeah,
accomplished.
yeah. Like I would love to share that with my family. Like I want them to be fucking proud of me because really I did it all without anybody's help. But I know that that will never be. So I'm in a part that's okay with it. But like, am I okay with what is? Absolutely. But do I wish sometimes that I could have that closer family dynamic? Yeah, but it is what it is.
Now, when do you think about that versus that? Because I think for me, I don't think about that so much because it just wasn't a part of something to be thought about. I was like, I'm just moving on to the next. So when do you reflect on,
And monumental, like
ba-
milestone kind of
so like if
things.
you opened your gym, when you reflect back afterwards or in that moment, you
Both.
wished, oh, okay,
Both.
that she was
Because like
there.
I'll ask them like, do you want to come do this or whatever? And there's been a couple of times where I've competed around the country when I was a pro power lifter that like my dad came, but it was because I was in his home state of Florida, which was really nice. He surprised me. It was like a 3-hour drive. Um, my mom came and visited me a couple times, but she's never come to any of my accolades or anything like that. Yeah, they went to my doctoral graduation, but like that was 10 years ago. Um, just never like plan on doing a lot more big things with my life and like I don't think they'll have a seat at the table of when I'm inviting people if because my goal is to be on Good Morning America, ladies and gentlemen.
Good
They will
morning.
not be in the limousine.
They will not be in the.
It will be my chosen family. But I just, so it is what it is. I would say mainly big events. Stephen and my wedding, we eloped because we aren't close with either of our families. We were doing it for us.
Yeah, see, nothing about my dad did I feel again, only the fitness thing where I reflected and said, "Oh, he did it." But there it wasn't in that moment when I started getting into fitness that I thought to myself, "Oh my God, my dad was involved in this. Where's he?" It wasn't until later down the road where I was like, "Man, if I'm reflecting, my dad was a big part in the whole fitness aspect for himself. Like, what could I have learned, or what could have expedited my experience had he been involved?" But I don't dwell on it. Also, I think that's also a dynamic. Whereas, like, are people so distraught by something like that that they allow it to consume them? Like, I just looked at it like, oh, I had this like thought in my brain about what that could have been like, and I'm like, oh, it's over with. It's the end of it. I think the only time that I reflect in the sense of like how you're saying is of current, obviously, because my sisters and my mom were we were like besties in that sense, every time we had family gatherings. Because, and this is another thing too, like my mom's from a Mexican family, so one of seven, she's the youngest of seven. So like even in my younger years, every time there was someone's birthday, every time it was like 4th of July, holiday, all my fucking Beaner Mexican family members would come to our house, and my mom would put on for all of my family members, all 6 other brothers and sisters. She had their kids, so I mean we'd have like fucking 30
It's a party.
30 plus people in there. She'd be buying all these extra things. But as you get older, that dynamic changes. Like, I don't talk to any of my cousins anymore, but I was raised with all my cousins because we used to do the whole, what do you call it, birthday. Like, if it was my birthday, they would all come. If it was someone else, we'd go to their house. It was all that. But as you get older, those different types of dynamics change. So I don't miss that because I think it was just part of my childhood. And then obviously as you get older and you get married or you have kids or you have your own life, everyone ends up doing their own thing. I think of recent, for me, it's more about like, if I'm missing something, it's what are my mom and my sisters currently doing together that I would have been a part of that I'm not. And I'm obviously seeing that on like Instagram. So there could be times where I'm like, oh, I would have been there, but I don't necessarily sit there and dwell on it more than it needs to. Cause I also say, well, I could probably change it if I chose to have the conversation and sit down and figure out what this is going to look like. Cause then I would definitively know, am I involved at that table, or the conversation already had and I'm not a part of it anymore. But right now it's that limbo of like seeing them, like my youngest sister's engaged to a baseball player, and they just played the Dodgers. So they all went to the game and they get tickets. They're sitting there, so those are things where I'm like, well, if I had a relationship with my mom, I would obviously be there.
Are you going to go to the wedding?
Probably not.
Really?
I mean, I wasn't there for
Is
the
it the
engagement.
sisters that you don't talk to?
The youngest one. Yeah, because my other one's already
Do you think
married.
she's going to invite you?
Well, they invited me
Mm.
to the proposal. For me, it's not about not wanting to go for her. It's about going there and how awkward. If I haven't had a conversation with the very person that is the centerfold to all this, which is my mom, like even for the engagement, if I go to it, like I told my older sister because she invited me. Obviously, my younger sister couldn't know about it because it was for her. But I told her, I'm like, what am I supposed to do when I go there? You're the only person I talk to. So what happens if you start going and engaging with other people?
Maybe it's time just to.
Yeah, it's a matter of having the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's why I said it's, sitting down and having that conversation. Because then once it's done and I've said my piece and they've said theirs and there's structure there, and now what does that look like moving forward? I think the reason why the disconnect happened was because where I was from the transition of fitness to where I'm at now, I just fell out of love of fitness and feeling like I was just constantly serving people for the whole fitness aspect, that it just took the life out of me of no joy. And so when I was transitioning, wanting to find something that was bringing that happiness back to me, my mom was feeding me, no, you got to keep doing this, keep doing this. And so it just continued to create a toxic space that when I did go into the OnlyFans space, that's even more toxic because she doesn't want me to do that. It doesn't reflect in her way. So the best thing that I could have done in that moment, whether I wanted to or not, was to disassociate from her so that I can get myself in line and in order mentally, not about what I'm doing for work. Because at the end of the day, if I chose to do OnlyFans for the rest of my life and I'm mentally happy and everything's great, she has to be okay with that.
Yeah.
I'm not making my decision. Like we talked about in another episode, and someone's like, you chose OnlyFans over your mom. I'm like, it has nothing to do with OnlyFans. It has everything to do with my happiness. And in that moment, my mom was not bringing happiness to my life. And if you're my best friend and you're not contributing to helping me grow, then you're just pulling me down in the other direction. So I inevitably had to make the hardest decision. It was disconnecting from her for my mental health, not disconnecting from her because I wanted nothing to do with my mom. It's just in that period of time when I was trying to lean on her, I was getting more of a business partner than I was getting a mother. And that's the part of the independence where I said my mom is definitely different in the sense of she's up to speed with things. She's on the internet. She does the social media. She was part of Shreds at one point. She knows how to market. She's not dumb. She's smart, and so some other people's mom, like maybe your mom, she doesn't even know how to use Instagram. My mom knows how to do the works, so I feel like I've always been raised with like a up to speed, hip mother that is on par with everything like that. So my disconnect wasn't because of a disagreement. It was my mental health at that time was at its all-time low. And you are the one person that I'm gravitating towards because you're my best friend and you weren't contributing to bringing my mental health even up remotely. It was either staying stagnant or worse.
I think people get confused with, like, especially with the family dynamic, like that person saying you chose OnlyFans over your mom. People confuse making someone else happy with living your own truth and being happy for yourself. And there's no world where you can live your life in service of someone else and still be happy with yourself. It's like your life is for you. It is exactly that, not for someone else. And like to confuse that, that's not a disrespect to your mother. That would be a disrespect to yourself if you didn't choose yourself. And if she doesn't want to agree with your life choices, then yeah, fuck her. But if she's saying the things that are true, like I miss you and I want to be in your life and this, that, and the other, then she needs to fully accept you with everything that you do. So it looks like we both have updates to give the audience. One, my speed dating, and two, if you end up having a conversation with your mother.
Yeah, I definitely will update on here whenever that time period happens. And there was one time I was actually going to visit my sister, and it was to visit her and my nieces, which is crazy. Growing up, my middle sister, me and her had the hardest time in confliction because she was young enough, close enough in age to me that when I was like 10, she was 3, 4. So I was teasing her. So our dynamic of growing up, we always were not as connected. I was more connected to the younger one, never fought, never anything. So it's crazy to see the full circle of all this. And my youngest one, who was like my closest of the two, like I feel like my older sister always had resentment to the idea that I was closer to her. I gave her more love and attention than her. So when this situation arose, I don't think that this is what my sister did, but I definitely feel like that was her opportunity to show me that she loved me or whatever, because she was the one that was there for me. Like, and so now our dynamic's different, where the younger one I don't speak to at all, and the older one, she's always there for me. So I guess the silver lining and all that too is like I was able to rekindle with my older sister, and she's there supportive of me. So one of the times when I went to go see her and my nieces, because she has 2 kids now, she's like, mom's on her way. And I was like, what do you mean she's on her way? She's like, her and your sister, or the youngest, they're coming to talk. And I was like, I'm not ready for this. Like, I had no idea that was what was going to happen.
Ambush.
I was flying in just to see my niece and just my two nieces and to see my sister hang out, whatever. So I told her no. I said, and they pulled up. And I was like, they're not coming in here. So they literally, my sister said they were crying in the car and they drove home.
That's a little fucked up, though, that you're not trying to see what they have to say.
Well, that time I wasn't
You
ready.
weren't ready.
No, it was like being ambushed.
Yeah.
You know, like if I went there, and that's what I'm saying, if I went there with the idea of like sitting there and having this conversation, then it's a different thing.
Well, they probably felt like that was the only way to trap you because you weren't responding, Devin.
Yeah, but that's not the way to constructively have a conversation like that. So at the end of the day, it'll happen at some point. I don't know when that's going to happen. And then obviously I'll have more clarity towards what that is. Because I've asked my sister, okay, we sit down, we have this conversation. I explain what my boundaries are, what I no longer want to be a part of when we're together anymore, bitching about me smoking weed and it smells and it this and, you know, just stupid shit that I was just like, does it fucking matter? Like, who cares? You know, like little dynamics of that. So let's say we have this conversation and everything gets hashed out. What is that going to look like moving forward? And I think the big thing for me that I've asked my sister is, are you going to be proud of me? You know, because it's easy to sit here and text me and say, you miss me, you love me, you want to rekindle it. But when it goes to showing me on social media, because that is a big thing for our family, they're showcasing it. I'm seeing them. Everyone's getting tagged. They're at the, you know, Dodger game supporting my sister's new husband, or whatever you want to call him, ex-fiance. And so they're all being in there. So what does that look like when I'm in there? And then the questions that my mom has to be asked of with people that she's friends with and in that circle. And I asked my sister and she's like, I don't know. You know, and I think that's a reason why I've hesitated. What's the point of having a conversation when you can't be proud of me?
You won't know if you don't have it.
Yeah, of course. But that's why I'd asked my sister, ask mom that. What is that going to look like? And I haven't really got an answer to that. So that's why I said, there's never going to be the perfect time. So when is the time going to be happen? But I'm also still at a place now where I'm still wanting to improve myself mentally, for myself physically and all those other things too. So I think that is part of where my focus right now is, my own personal journey of getting myself 100% where I want to be. And then once I feel like I'm in that good grace there, then obviously, you know, rehashing that. But yeah, we'll see. I mean, obviously we'll have a report to give to people of what that ends up looking like. I mean, obviously if we fix things, you're going to see my mom on my social media, which is crazy.
We'll have her on the podcast.
If people have followed me long enough, I mean, they would know how much,
they used to post with
how
her.
much important part of my life she was to me. So we'll see. You know, family stuff is hard, right? I mean, you go through the waves of the ups and downs. And luckily for me in my life, I never had these issues. It was only of recent that, you know, so when you share your story, it's like you had it worse than me in the sense of like your mom wasn't really a motherly figure that you could sit there and be proud of.
Yeah.
You know, like I feel like you've accomplished more than she has.
Oh, for sure.
You know, and so I don't feel that way. I think a lot of mine was just solely stemming from the fact that when I needed the emotional support, when I was in the states that I was in, I wasn't getting that from my mother. I was getting a business partner. And I think that's where that dynamic changed, where for you, it's like you've constantly given chances over and over, and then you're seeing within those chances,
I've been the parent to my parents.
Yeah. And so that kind of stuff, it's easy to kind of just wash it under the rug, and maybe you don't have as much feeling towards it, where, you know, you've given enough opportunities over and over again.
It makes me mad that at this point, I don't think I'm going to have kids because of how old I am and what happened in my life, that I'm not going to get to break the generational pattern because I wanted to.
Oh, because your brother didn't have kids either.
No.
What generational pattern? Well, what does that mean? What would that mean? Like
my mom is the way she is because the way that her mom was. My mom's mom is the exact same fucking way that my mom is.
And you're not having the opportunity to be a parent to shift it.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So my goal in life is to be a good role model to women, since I didn't get to have kids of my own, and I'm not going to get that experience of, you know, helping to raise well-aware, healthy, emotionally intelligent children. I would like to consider myself as a good role model to other women, to show them not how to be a woman, but how to successfully navigate some of the challenges that women face without sacrificing your fierceness, your independence, or who you are as a woman, and still being able to stay in your feminine energy and being soft, and sometimes knowing when it's time to be firm. And I never got that from my mother, so I had to find that within myself.
And it's crazy. Like my dad, same thing. Didn't have his dad in his life. He repeats the same thing. Your mom had a upbringing with her mom, and then she continues.
That's why I went to CBT, because you're fucked up from your family. So if you don't address it,
and I wonder what's the chemical imbalance where you would think like for me, I would think with my dad, you didn't have your dad in your life.
It's all you know. So that's why there's a whole therapy developed towards cognitive behavioral therapy of addressing your familial childhood traumas so that you don't repeat them, because history repeats itself, right? We are the traumatized individuals
now,
we become.
But do you think that your mom or my dad thought in their process when they had a kid they're never going to do that or be the same way that their mom was or dad was to them? And so where does it shift? Because I also say to myself, if I had a kid, I would never just ghost my kid.
I think the self-awareness, because my mom, even though I've had these conversations with her and I've told her flat out, like, you are your mother. Your mother disowned you, and now you've disowned your son. My mom tried to commit suicide when her mom died because she was that distraught because their relationship was that fractured. She wrote like a 10-page letter delineating how she was going to commit suicide and like left for a day. And we were like, what the fuck? And I brought that out as clear as day, but she's not willing to look in a mirror and do the work and sit down and do that self-inventory and see what it takes to address the person who she's become that was shaped by her environment. And she hasn't made those social emotional changes within herself, which most people don't, which is why we always advocate therapy is amazing.
But I mean, you have to want to go there for the right reasons too, right? Not just, oh, I'm going through shit, I'm going to go to therapy, but I'm not going to take it as serious to
Right, no, you have to do the hard work
to figure out, you know, what exactly it is. Because even when I went to therapy, I didn't know exactly what it was that was triggering my behaviors. I had to really dig deep. And I don't even think really the lying aspect and going deep into that was even on my radar until I really put in that deep work to figure that out. So do you know for certain that you're not going to have kids?
Unless it happens on accident, I ain't trying.
Yeah.
I'm an independent woman, but I'm not that type of woman that's like, I want to have children by myself. No, I would like to have a family unit. And at this point, I am.
Now, would you have had kids with Steven? Did you guys talk about that?
So he died 3 weeks out from his show, which was in June. In October, I was set to compete that year. And then we were going to have kids, start our family planning like at the end of that year. Like, as soon as my show was over, we're both getting off drugs and we're going to have family. Like, that was our life plan.
And I'm curious to know, like, how that would have happened. Let's say you had a kid and then he died. Like, how much would that have shifted? Would that have influenced you more to even be more of a mother because of that dynamic? Would it have shifted you to have characteristics of your mother's mother?
I think I'm so self-aware of how I'm so self-aware of the shortcomings of both of my parents and how it's influenced both my life and my brother's life that I would never let that happen. I think most people let it happen because they're not self-aware of how it has negatively affected their emotional status and their timeline. But I try not to go down roads of possibilities that never could happen with Steven's death and my life because it's just upsetting and they're not realities. And I've learned, and this is a strategy that I've learned in my grief therapy, you can, replay a million things. Like, what if I would have done that? What if we would have done that? Like, it's just scenarios that will ultimately kind of upset me. So I try to shun myself from doing those.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Well, obviously everything happens for a reason. So it didn't get to that point because it wasn't supposed to happen.
I don't believe that.
What?
I don't believe everything happens for a reason.
No?
I don't believe that the love of my life should have fucking died. There's no fucking reason for that.
But, I mean, okay, everything happens for a reason in the sense of, like, because it could have been prevented, so obviously he influenced that.
I just think that that's a euphemism that people like to use to make themselves feel better about a shitty situation.
That happens.
You can just say, that fucking sucks and that shouldn't have happened. Not, everything happens for a reason. I think that's like, I'm not saying you're being dismissive. I think that term in general
when you say
dismissive.
It that way, that makes sense.
Yeah.
I guess when I say it, I don't say it the way that people say it like that, so I get what you're saying because it happened because it happened.
Yeah.
Not for, or I get what you're saying. The whole reason aspect is that whole like, oh, we're playing the little coddle card.
Yeah, there's no reason. It just happened and it fucking sucks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What if you say it happened because it was supposed to happen?
That's even worse. Damn it, you were supposed to die, Steven. On that note, family dynamics was fun. We have some updates, so I'll definitely update y'all. Next episode, we are having a guest. We're going to keep it a secret. So
it is next one, right?
yeah. So tune in next week.
We will have a new guest
On Tuesday, we're going to have a lovely lady join us.
And I'm hoping that we get into what she shared with me. That was very intimate. It was very private, and even though it was at the club, but I was just so blown away by her story.
She's got a great story. She's a great human.
And especially from the fact that I only knew so much about her from the gym, and the dynamics of that.
Don't
in
give
and
it
out.
away.
They don't know who they. We're just
Anyways,
hyping. We're
next
just hyping
week,
this up. Like
we are going to have a guest. Devin's going to give away too much information.
No, I'm giving them the info of like I was blown away. Like when we were sitting there in the
Be
club.
prepared to be blown next Tuesday, ladies and gentlemen.
Yeah, blown.
Be prepared. We're going to blow you. On that note, Tell No Lies Podcast, Devin Physique, Ashley Contorno. Find us on YouTube and our website, tellnoliespod.com.
Thank you guys for joining. We'll see you next week with our guest.
Bye.
Peace.